Yeah, so we've got Christopher C. Cogswell, veteran. Thank you for coming. You're an infantry scout in Operation Just Cause, an infantry squad leader in Operation Desert Storm.
Yes, yes.
Cool. So to start out, where'd you grow up?
In New Canaan, Connecticut. I was born in Stamford, and I went 18 years in New Canaan.
Would you say if there's any factors of where you grew up that made you join the Army, or just?
Factors of where I grew up. So I did not have the resources to go to college immediately out of high school, as far as financially.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to join the military, go into the GI Bill, and it received money to get my college degree.
Was the training experience any different than you thought it would be, than you expected?
I didn't expect anything. It was definitely hard, but opened my eyes to a lot of things that I didn't think I could do.
Mm-hmm. Would you say like the people that you trained with, were they having similar experiences to you?
Yes, it's total mixing pot of everybody throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody struggled with it. Some people made it, some people didn't.
Mm-hmm.
As far as basic training boot camp.
Yeah. What do you think like the hardest part of the training experience was?
Adapting to a new life. Leaving your hometown, the comfort of your house, mom, dad,
Mm-hmm.
and going in and basically writing a blank check to the United States of America,
Mm-hmm.
saying this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So you said like it's hard to leave your family behind. Does that mean that you didn't get to talk to people you knew back home very often?
No. Your first 4 weeks of boot camp, you really have no communication back home. After your first 4 weeks of training, you're allowed phone calls to call loved ones, mom, dad, anyone you want.
So that's particularly a difficult part?
Yeah, I'd say not for me as much. I was probably homesick for 2 weeks, but I was glad to leave, on my own. But there was a lot of kids that were really homesick, tears involved, tantrums.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 18 years old. You're supposed to be a grown person.
How's that handled?
It's handled more with what I saw back when I joined was physical discipline.
Mm-hmm.
If a guy, and he was ridiculed in front of his peers to try to stop that behavior and make him grow up immediately. They didn't have time to do guidance counselor or Psych 101 with these guys. It was do or die.
It kind of reminds me of that movie Full Metal Jacket. Seen that?
Oh yeah, many times.
Is it kind of similar to that?
That's Marine boot camp. Marine boot camp during that era, very stringent, very strict. Army boot camp was a little lighter, but yeah, when I was in, definitely screaming in your face, lots of physical training, lots of ridicule. It's to break you down and rebuild you.
Yeah. Awesome. So you want to get into the...
Why did you pick the branch that you joined?
I think, to be honest, the Army recruiter was the first that I saw when I went to Norwalk. It was right across from the Ford dealership, and I guess I just picked the Army. Didn't want to go in the Marines because I had family members that went in the Marines and said it was extremely physically hard, demanding. So, picked the Army.
And were there women in the boot camp, like training? Or?
No, strictly male. I was in an infantry cohort unit, and it was all male, no co-ed.
So, when you were first found out you were going to war, what was your reaction like?
First time?
Mm-hmm.
When I went to Operation Just Cause, I was actually excited because that's what we trained to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got stationed in California, we went to a jungle operations training center in the same place in Panama. It was Camp Davis, Panama. So that was the year before. And then everything escalated in Panama and we went. So I was actually excited.
Like prepared and ready.
Prepared, ready. That's what we trained for.
And do you remember arriving there? Like, what was your initial reaction?
Won't use swear words, but I was scared to death.
Yeah.
Definitely. 19 years old, didn't know what to expect. Got a loaded weapon, you're trained to go, but you don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. And like, were you given an initial like assignment or job? Like,
I was actually not in a leadership position for that conflict, so our job was mainly security down there, because it was a joint task force, so didn't really know the whole scope of it back then. Now I do, but...
And what was the experience like for everyone?
Everyone. When you speak of everyone, everyone in my squad, everybody
Yeah,
in my
in your
platoon, I mean, just the immediate people that were around me. We were a pretty tight-knit group. We all had trained together for the first 2.5 years of my service, so we knew each other. We knew each other's families. We knew each other's kids. The experience was good because we got to use our training instead of all peacetime and, like, you know, paintball wars. The military uses Miles gear, which is like laser beepers. Now it was for real, so everybody was excited into it. But it's not the kind of thing like a Vietnam vet's talking about, where it was total chaos and bodies dropping around you. We were in a security force. You know, we did fire our weapons, but the experience was rewarding. It's like kind of going to college and getting your degree. You got to go get your degree out there in wartime. That's the way I looked at it.
Is it what's the emotions that's involved with firing a weapon? What do you like? What's the last thing you think of when you're pointing a weapon at something?
At something?
Well,
Training in a target?
What's the difference between shooting at something that you might think there could be a person over there or a target? Was there any immediate difference the first time you maybe had to shoot at something where there might be people?
No. It was just a reaction. No emotions involved. Your emotions come later for some people, immediate. Mine came much later, years later.
And that's from the training?
Yeah, I'd say you're hardened, like you're hardening a piece of metal. You're trained just to not react at that time. Some people didn't, but that was me.
So the training was obviously successful for you.
Yes.
But it's not always successful for other people.
No.
Why do you think that is?
Some people are wired different. They just couldn't adapt to, at the other end of your sights or the barrel of a weapon, that you were going to end another human being's life, regardless who it was.
So you say later on that kind of changed. So are there any differences between your two involvements?
Differences in where I was, or my emotional state?
Mental differences. Just.
I was. It was different because I was in a leadership position. When I went to Desert Storm, I had men under me, so it was my responsibility to bring them back home safe. So my emotion was totally different.
Yeah. So that's definitely a harder position for you to take care of all the people underneath you, make sure they're okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, because you've got those 9 men, and then you've got a platoon sergeant, of course, and then it progresses upper echelon to company commanders, what they have to do. But for me, it was my job that I was trained from the company commander to bring your men home safe. That's what you have to do. And
they depended on you to do that.
They depend on you. They depend on you to make the split decision to keep them safe, keep their heads down,
so
complete the mission.
That weighs heavy on you probably. In addition to your own safety, you have to worry about all those other people.
At the time, yeah.
So, but that's part of being a leader, and you were chosen to do that. Do you think that was like the right choice for your commanding officer to make you?
Oh yeah, it's natural progression in the Army. You have a certain amount of points, you're promoted to a certain rank, and then you naturally take a slot of team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant. It's natural selection, and then they provide you the right training. Primary leadership development, they give you NCO development, so you are trained to take care of these men. You're never trained to get off an aircraft and go into a war zone. You can be totally prepared physically and think you're prepared mentally as far as your skill level, but there's the other side of the emotion that some people just aren't wired for.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, like, there's a lot of stress involved, and it's all very formal. What would you and your friends do to kind of calm down, and like, what did you do for entertainment?
Peacetime, wartime.
Wartime.
Most of it was physical. If we were in a FOB or a forward observer operating base, you didn't have a gym. You didn't have those facilities to release it. So you would do regular PT, push-ups, sit-ups. You would be able to run. Stress relief would be getting involved in a game of spades that would take 24 hours to complete, you know, just to get your mind off of what you were doing.
Is there any competition amongst you and your friends?
Physically, yeah. You get awards for PT level, physical training. So you're graded on a 2-mile run, push-ups and sit-ups. So the more physically fit you were and the less fatigued you got during a mission or your PT scores, definitely competition. And it was mostly physical, not at the leadership level. It was your intelligence, how you could guide your men and how you could train your men. But at the follower level, where you're a squad member, definitely physical competition, who was better.
So waking up in the morning, know that your like welfare is on the line. Are there any like good luck things you do, or anything like that? Like any rituals you'd go through?
I didn't have any rituals. I had pictures of my children.
Yeah.
I had pictures of my kids that I looked at every day, and my wife.
And you think that was one of the most important things to keep you going?
For me, yeah, it was definite motivation to keep my head down and get back home.
Yeah.
Other guys did other things, but that was me.
And how did you keep in touch?
Different conflicts have different ways of contacting people back home. I know it's different now, but back then it was all telephonic. So when we were done with a mission, if we were back in the rear, we had access to a telephone. We could call loved ones. There's the bell. But if you were in Iraq and Afghanistan and those guys were in FOBs, they didn't have that contact. If you didn't have a cell phone that had international calls, back then when I was in, we didn't have cell phones in. So very limited contact.
How did your family deal with that? How did they respond to you going off to war, not being able to, not too much communication?
Scared. They always wanted to know how I was doing and making sure I was keeping my head down. My mom, when I left for Panama, my mom put up her first flagpole in her yard, and that flag has flown ever since I left in 1989.
Wow.
In New Canaan, you can drive by it. It's right on Locust Avenue.
And what was your most memorable experience from Operation Just Cause?
Getting on the plane to come home.
Okay.
The mission was done. They told us a date that we were leaving. That's my most memorable experience, packing up my gear and coming home.
And like, how were the living conditions, like food, supplies, everything?
Panama was awesome. We had a mess hall. We had hot meals all the time, unless we were out on a mission. Then we had what they were called MREs. We had hot showers. So Panama was really awesome for doing the mission, coming back and getting to regular life. We had TVs, you know, we could watch movies. Desert Storm was a little different. For the first couple of weeks at Desert Storm, you had nothing but a tent and cold meals, or one hot meal, or waiting for water to fill your canteen. So Desert Storm was a little different.
Do you think that affected morality among troops?
Yes.
And
totally different if you can't take a hot shower every day or every other day, or have a hot meal, or turn on the news, or just totally turn off what's going on and turn on the TV.
And for Desert Storm, for Operation Just Cause, you said coming home was the most memorable experience. What about for Desert Storm?
The transition from Desert Storm to Desert Shield, when we were just in a security position, telling my family that basically the war is over, we're just here guarding. that was different, because then that changed and we went to a rear base, and we worked out of a rear base where we had hot showers, and there was actually a little nightclub down below in one of the places. I'm not going to tell you where it was, but it was nice. It was on a base, secure. So I'd say it's the transition in between Desert Storm and Desert Shield.
And between the two operations, were you interacting with like more civilians than before, or like how was that interaction?
Civilians, the only people we dealt with in Panama were people that supported the PDF. Civilians, we tried only to get them out of harm's way. In Desert Storm, when we were no civilian contact whatsoever, but Desert Shield, we were guarding certain bases, so we had to let civilian contractors in, and that was a different role because you had to check vehicles, you had to check personnel, and nobody liked us being over there. It was their country. What are we there guarding their country for?
And were you ever like attacked or like
by a civilian?
Yeah, like because you were there.
Never had a conflict with a civilian. Maybe an argument why we searched their vehicle so much, but that was controlled by upper echelon officers that were right available. They would come and control the situation.
Was there much of a significant cultural and like language barrier, so that caused problems ever? Or?
Yeah, we were sent in the country. Especially Panama was Spanish, which was different, but Arabic was a very hard language to learn. We learned a couple of sayings. But yeah, the language barrier definitely, as far as Desert Shield, constricted you on communicating with the civilians what they could and couldn't do. A lot of time it was a piece of paper that we would hand to them so they could read, this is the rules and regulations of entering this base. You couldn't talk to them. A lot of them didn't speak English, so big barrier.
Yeah.
We didn't have a linguist with us at every guard post. So.
So you want to continue on through post-war?
In between Operation Just Cause in Panama, and Desert Storm, did you go home? Or?
Yeah, I had a total different life change. When I came back from Panama, I was stationed in California. The end of my tour in California was like 6 months later, so I re-enlisted and I changed duty stations. I moved to Colorado. So yeah, it was a total, I came home to Connecticut, but total different lifestyle change. My whole life changed, moved to a different house, different state, kids went to a different school, so yeah, it was like leaving that part of my life behind.
And after you got home from Desert Storm, Desert Shield, did you like feel changed, or did you know that you were done, or were you considering re-enlisting and going back?
No, I knew I was done. I stayed in for 2.5 years longer after Desert Storm. That was the end of my enlistment, but I knew I wasn't going to stay in any longer.
Yeah.
Is there anything that made you choose to end it after that?
Time away from my family. Being in an infantry or an armored unit, you were always deployed. I was deployed 9 months out of the year. I was missing a lot. So I made a decision that family was more important and that I had to get out of the military to enjoy that so I wouldn't miss something.
Would you say your reception back home from your family, was that any different than you expected?
No,
friends?
the transition back home was, mom was in charge. It was, you had to ease right back in. You couldn't come in and be the drill sergeant or the squad leader to your kids who wouldn't adapt, but didn't know what to expect. Each time it's different. Not just wartime, but going out and training in the field. If you go out for 30 days, you come back, you're migrated back into this system of you're not involved in, school and their regular schedule, and now dad's involved, so definite big transition.
And also coming back from like a leadership role in the Army, do you think that changed the way your like decision-making process and like changed the way you might just do things in everyday life?
Oh yeah, being trained as a leader in the military made me strive towards being a leader in civilian life. When I got out, I did construction right off the bat. I was just a laborer in construction, but I climbed the ladder. 9 months later, I was a supervisor of a crew. So the training I did in the Army strived me to jump on that ladder and climb faster, not just be a follower, but be a leader. So yeah, definitely.
Are there any like particular traits that kind of put yourself in that position and make yourself a leader? Like, are you more patient than you were? Or can you handle quick decisions better?
I think my ability to make decisions on the fly was part of my success in construction, because it's ever changing. It's dictated by weather, it's dictated by deliveries of supplies, so my quick decision making helped me as far as being in a leadership role.
And do you stay in touch with those who you served with?
Yes, I do. I have 2 Army buddies, one in Worcester, Mass., one in Long Island, that we have been friends since 1987, and we still stay in contact. We see each other at least once a year, or once every other year.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you become very close with the people that you have to work with and protect and depend on to protect you.
Yeah, you do. You build a friendship or camaraderie, if you want to call it, that lasts forever.
So it's kind of the public reception. Is that any different than your friends and family? Like, did people treat you differently knowing that you were a veteran that you didn't know?
Back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, to me it wasn't like Vietnam, they're spitting on you and yelling at you, but there was no public reception. And people didn't follow the conflicts or wars, so I didn't have public involvement. Now, what I see is the veteran is held higher with the new, the Iraq and Afghanistan war, and but back then, no.
No. Are there any lasting effects from the war? Like, maybe, I guess not the way that people treat you, but like you said, how you can make decisions quickly on the fly. Anything else?
From wartime, keep safe. Always have a sense of awareness. Some people call it paranoia, but I would say have a good sense of awareness of everything around me. Being vigilant. It may not be a good trait, but I think it helps me survive a lot of things.
And when you returned, what was your reaction to the kind of lack of knowledge of the public? Like you said, that people didn't really know, or
my recollection of it was no big deal. I didn't want to be put up on a podium or my name in the paper, or I was just glad that my family opened me with a big warm welcome, and everybody that stayed behind gave us a big warm welcome at the base. So I mean, that was good enough. I don't think any of us really looked for a public reception.
But it's not ever disappointing.
No.
To know that you protect these people.
No.
No.
No, I never expected an audience. I didn't do it for them. I did it for me.
So going into the Army and then coming out of the war, did you have any previous opinions that might have changed when you came back about war? Did you kind of go into thinking any specific things, and then realizing that maybe they weren't right?
It's not as ugly as people make it out to be. Opinions change. That's kind of a difficult question. But going in the Army and not expecting to go into war, I never expected to go into war. So actually going to a hostile environment, a conflict, a war, whatever the military wants to call it, my perception of it was what I saw for Vietnam vets when they came back. Is they came back and people didn't like it. I didn't expect that, so when I came back and there was nothing, that was good.
And if you could go back and tell yourself something like from before you went to war, like an advice, tip, anything, what would you tell yourself?
Bring some more food from home. Bring some more Twinkies or something civilianized, you know, something to keep you regular. Because over there's nothing to, except for what you bring with you, like pictures or, you know, any kind of food to make you think that you're normal. So that's what I would tell myself, to bring more things to civilianize your life out of mission. Pictures, cards, something that smelled like my family or my kids or something like that.
You were talking about the food. What was the food like?
Leftover cafeteria food for about a week, most of the time. Unless you were with the Air Force. Air Force had really good food. Army food it's like the cafeteria pasta. Yeah, I see the look on your face.
On like Thanksgiving or any holidays, would they do anything special? Would there be any?
Yeah, you'd have a special meal. They'd decorate the mess hall.
Yeah.
You know, usually the mess people would decorate at Christmas. You have Christmas music going on, and we have a traditional meal at Christmas. You know, turkey and mashed potatoes, and there's usually church services if people want to go to church. If you were deployed at that time, it wasn't like Full Metal Jacket or singing "Happy Birthday to Jesus." Didn't happen.
Yeah.
And what's one thing that you think would be surprising to someone who has like no knowledge or experience in war?
More detail.
Like,
I could surprise somebody of your age or somebody in, you know, is it age quality or just a human being? What would surprise them?
Yeah.
Wow. That you don't get peanuts and soda on a military aircraft when you travel to war. You're traveling in a cargo seat. You don't have a flight attendant or a stewardess helping you out. I guess that would surprise them.
So it starts right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, we did civilian aircraft on the way to Desert Storm, but to Panama we flew in C-131s, which are cargo seats, like you know, for airborne troops. And you're sitting in a cargo seat, and there's nobody to tell you what to do. And you get off the aircraft, out the ramp in the back, not down the stairs or through a jetway.
While you're at war and away from home, is it for sleep? Already, probably there probably wasn't too much time off to sleep. But was it easy to like fall asleep and kind of just get yourself in that peaceful mode while you know you're kind of always in danger at a certain level?
It really depended on how much physical training you could do. You were exhausted maybe mentally or maybe physically from a certain mission, but if the mission wasn't physically exhausting, yes, you had a hard time getting to sleep. But normally after that, you would do some kind of physical training to exert your body to get sleep. That was part of the training. That's what I saw in Panama as a follower, as part of the squad, and that's what I practiced when I was a squad leader in Desert Storm, that make sure my guys got this kind of physical training because it helped you go somewhere else in your brain.
And what were the supplies like? Like, did you have to wear like pounds and pounds of supplies on you at all times, or was it?
Two different conflicts. I was light infantry when I went to Panama, so yes, everything you had, you carried on your back. Ammo, weapons, food that you were out. Desert Storm, I was mechanized infantry, so I was on the tanks, so we were with the tankers, so you didn't carry a pack. When we deployed people out the back of the Bradley fighting vehicles, they only had their supplies they needed to do that mission. So yeah, totally different. How much was the pack? 90 pounds probably.
Wow.
Easily 90 pounds.
And you'd go on runs with that and do all your exercise with all your equipment?
We did. We would do it once a week or twice a week. But you wouldn't run with a 90-pound pack. you would run, half your weight, but twice the distance.
And in Panama, you were like being weighed down, and was it hot? Like, did you feel ever that you just couldn't physically bear it anymore?
A couple of times. We were in the monsoon season there, so it rained a lot, so you were really wet all the time, and the humidity levels were very high, so if the temperatures did rise, it was a problem. But you were always soaking wet.
Wow.
Because it just rained all the time, relentlessly.
Muddy and all that.
Yeah, mud. I mean, it's just everything. You couldn't keep everything clean. There was a lot of times where we would spend more time after the mission than the mission actually took to recover the equipment. So it was operational for the next mission.
Did you get like new shipments of equipment, or once you had yours, was that it?
If something broke, it could get repaired. As far as equipment, vehicles, or uniforms, if something did break or was unusable, we would repair it there or get something new. We didn't get like supply shipments. Supply shipments were food and clean water and everything that the supply store need, toilet paper and stuff like that.
And then, did you ever get injured on line of?
I'm not going to tell you.
What do you think is the most important piece of equipment, other than I guess your weapon? I've heard how socks, like keeping your socks dry, is really important, and make sure you always have a dry pair of socks. Do you have any?
Important to have, or important to keep in tune?
Important to keep in tune.
Socks are definitely good. Keeping your weapon cleaned and oiled. Most important thing. Is you don't want to have a malfunction of your weapon when you need it.
Did that ever happen to you?
Yeah, it did. In Panama. But I practiced and preached that in Desert Storm with my men. That was the most important thing. Because the M4 or the M16 was known for that. So that, and keep your mind sharp. Don't think about home. Don't think about anything but the mission for that time. You want to, when the mission's done, you think about everything else. So mind sharp, weapon cleaned and oiled, you were good to go.
I think that's...
And in Desert Storm, when you were patrolling, what was your like reaction to just the state of where you were? Like, what did you see? What was it like?
Desert Storm, as everybody can tell you, it was the 100-hour war. So visions of a lot of the missions were at night, and we didn't do much during daytime hours, but it smelled like burning oil, and you couldn't see more than 100 feet in front of you. And I was mechanized. I was in the Bradleys. So memories or visions of the country were very vague. It was a lot of desert. Desert Shield, we got to see a lot more. We got to see, some places in, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, so it was a lot different. But during the actual conflict, nothing. It didn't last long enough.
Did you sleep during the day?
If the mission required it, yes. Sometimes you didn't sleep at all. Sometimes you'd go off of an hour or 2 hours of sleep. But it was so fast. I mean, it was 100 hours and it was done.
And for as long as you were deployed in both situations, did you notice any significant changes or any progress that I don't know, did you notice any progress from when you arrived and then from when you left?
Progress in
just
myself, or
in your Army squadron, just what you were trying to do while you were deployed.
So like in Desert Storm, in the mission involved, our mission was X, and did I see my men strive to their training and progress forward? Yes, I did. What did I see? That their bond as a unit grew stronger. They actually really relied. It wasn't peacetime joking. It was, you had to rely on that person in front of you, that person next to you, to have your six.
And what would happen if maybe like intelligence was wrong, or you couldn't make progress in a certain portion of maybe you're trying to get like you're trying to gain control of a certain area? What would happen if it would fail? Did that ever happen?
I never experienced that, but there were other squads that experienced that, and it was handled by the upper echelon of people. So it would go from squad leader, platoon leader, and we would call command.
Do you have any final thoughts for the interview?
If I had my way or a decision, I think it would be good for everybody in the United States before or after college to go in the Army or go in any of the armed services, to do at least 2 years, to experience what everybody else experiences.
You think it develops your character in a way that's positive?
Yes, most definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you. And we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. What questions do you have?
None.
None. Go ahead, sir.
How was your life growing up in Ukraine compared to your life?
Comparison of your life in New Canaan compared to your life deployed.
Wow. New Canaan's like Mayberry. It's a very safe haven town, small knit, low population. Being deployed, you didn't have that bubble around you. Felt unprotected. Sum it up.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Did you do it all over again?
In a heartbeat.
One last question.
Do you think your involvement in the army and everything changed the way you now see wars compared to other citizens who were never involved in the army, like the way you approve or see them?
I know more of what happens as far as terminology and everything in the war and mission involvement, so yeah, I would change my opinion because I know how they could handle it and why they did it or what they were covering up.
Thank you. I wish we had more time for more questions, but the bell's about to ring, and I want to make sure we give a proper thank you to Chris for coming in today. Thanks very much.